Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month, and there's also a free trial option, and that's where I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content, including class predictions and visit lists and things like that. So the link will also be in the show notes. And finally, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is episode 99. Visit policy tested by wide receiver. Unofficial visitors return to Norman. So let's start with the 2025 sort of commitment recruiting news, such as it is. And as anticipated, predicted, both on this podcast and on my Patreon site, after his second visit in 2 weeks to Nebraska, Christian Jones, the linebacker from Nebraska, from Omaha, verbal to Nebraska. Not a big surprise. I think everyone saw this coming when he didn't commit before the season started, and when Nebraska got off to, I guess for them, a hot start. And obviously being in Lincoln over the weekend, Nebraska had a whole bunch of visitors and kind of put it to Coach Prime in the first half, grabbing a 28-0 lead and kind of running away with that game. It was probably a pretty good environment. You know, Nebraska fans had finally something to really cheer about. So Jones verbal to Nebraska, and that really resets the OU linebacker board for 2025 back to square one, except for the one name we'll talk about in a minute. I'd like to see a couple of offers go out. We mentioned someone last week that we thought OU should make an offer to. I'd like to see OU follow up with that offer, if possible, or try and get someone else on campus, start working to flip somebody. They need two linebackers in this class, I think. They need Marcus James and someone else. So the name we continue to follow until we get some kind of resolution. It's not Andrew Babalola's fault, but we're obviously sort of in week 5 of the Babalola watch, I guess. So despite multiple sources last week indicating a decision was coming, no decisions happened. No decision date has been announced. We're still back to OU, Michigan, and maybe Auburn as a final 3, I guess. I'm not sure what the holdup is. Usually in circumstances like this, maybe it's a house divided. Maybe a family member, maybe some family members prefer different schools, something along those lines. Not quite sure what the holdup is. Maybe he'll take some unofficial visits to his final 3 to see if he can decide something. I mentioned that last week. Still haven't seen any sign of him visiting anywhere. So we're still in a holding pattern. Other folks have been saying this, but I've also maintained, I think the longer this goes, I think the more it favors OU as the longer school with the longest relationship with Babalola. But stay tuned. So we mentioned that Elijah Melendez had decommitted from Miami, but he did it on an Auburn visit. So we were kind of anticipating an Auburn verbal, as everybody else in recruiting was, because Auburn's kind of on a money hot streak. But they haven't quite flipped a couple of people everyone thought they would, including Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame quarterback, verbal. So we're now 10 days removed from his Auburn visit. So I think the odds of a return visit to OU go up. Every day he's not committed to Auburn, I think the chance that Melendez could show up in Norman for the Tennessee game go up. Also, the longer no verbal to Auburn happens, I think there's a chance other schools will come and play. I mean, he's too talented a linebacker. He's a big time prospect. So top 100 guy in my opinion, even though all the services don't agree on that. But I think that's where he is. I think he's a difference maker. I think we'll see if he's still by the end of September. If he's still in play, I think we'll see some additional teams get involved into this mix. So now let's talk about the sort of the episode heading, the topic there. So this isn't commitment news. This is possible decommitment news, I guess, sort of. So Cortez Mills, the talented wide receiver from Florida, who you know I really like on film and I think is a top 100 player, he visited Nebraska, and it looks like it was an official visit based upon all the information that's out there. So technically, if you want to get hyper technical about it, this visit goes against OU's guideline for their verbal commitments. Brent says, don't verbally commit until you're done taking visits. Pretty simple. It doesn't say, that you have to. It doesn't say you have to stop taking visits. It doesn't say anything like that, but just don't don't verbally commit until you're ready. Take your time. We'll be here for you or won't, depending upon numbers and positioning. So where's this going? So he hasn't, as of Tuesday night, he hasn't decommitted to OU. Okay. So I'm guessing this is going one of two ways. First, OU and Mills have kind of a come to Jesus. I bet Brent drives this conversation with Mills that, okay, all right, we didn't want you to take this visit. You told us you potentially weren't going to take this visit, and then you took this visit. That's not how all this works. So at least be upfront with us and let us know what's going on so we can start bringing in other wide receivers, prospects, or reallocate your position to somewhere else on our depth chart that we need help. Offensive line, tight end, edge rusher, all positions where I would prefer an additional player to a fifth wide receiver in this class. So that conversation happens, and Mills says, okay, I got you. I understand. I just really wanted to take an unofficial visit. I really wanted to take one more visit. I had a free weekend. Never been to Nebraska. Just wanted to go, which sounds kind of like an absurd explanation, but let's just take that at face value. And then Mills says, that's fine. I'm completely shutting everything down. I got you. I understand now. Okay, I get it. This is not what I need to be doing. Or Mills says, well, I want to continue taking official visits this fall. And OU says, okay, well, then you're not technically committed to us any longer. So you might want to, so we're going to start bringing in other kids in your slot until you decide, so just be aware that if you don't shut things down, if someone comes in, they're going to take your spot. So I think some sort of decommitment will happen if Mills decides that. He'll basically just say, okay, well, you're telling me I don't have a spot any longer. OU's like, no, you don't have a guaranteed spot with us any longer. So I think he'll say, well, I'm decommitting. So one of those two scenarios, it's going to play out probably in the next week, I would guess. And if he does decommit, which I would say probably, I would say probably that's where things are leaning based upon, if you're going to take an unofficial visit to Nebraska, what's stopping you from taking an unofficial visit to Alabama, Tennessee, USC, or I already went to LSU, or somewhere else, right? Why would you not go visit other places? And he's a talented enough wide receiver that lots of schools would, love to have him on campus. So I think that's what will happen. But Emmett Jones is a big time recruiter. Brent is obviously a very good recruiter himself. Maybe after a serious conversation, Mills shuts it down. I don't know, but I would imagine that we'll have one answer on this one way or the other by this weekend, by middle of next week at the latest. So you could lose one of their top commitments, but this Brent policy has stopped most kids from doing this. Has put OU in a better position to be able to make offers in state because I don't have to worry about kids verbaling early because of the policy. We think it works very well that way. I think it works out well that way. And all around the country, there, places like Ohio State and Georgia are seeing their top commitments take official visits to other places. So it's at least trying to have some roster sanity in the madness that is recruiting. So we'll see what happens here. But again, there's no confusion as to whether he took this visit. There's a photo of him on the sidelines at Nebraska, so it's not like he can say, well, I didn't go, coach, and try and do one of these super secret visit things. That doesn't work in today's world of social media and iPhones. You're not sneaking into anywhere, anytime in this modern environment. So that's the commitment news, such as it is. One last note. Josh McCuistion from Sooner Scoop did put in a prediction forecast, crystal ball, RPM, whatever On3 is calling their forecast system. He did put in a forecast for Jordan Kent, the safety, which I've talked about on this podcast and on the Patreon site quite heavily for him. He's from Lone Star Frisco, teammate of Ryder Mix, the OU tight end commitment. He did put in a forecast for him. That's interesting. He's 6'3", like 185, plays wide receiver as well. He's the safety for OU. This would be a really big pickup if Josh has a read on some things that are about to fall soon. I think he's a top 100 type player and just continues the Brandon Hall restocking of the OU safety room. OU has made one new offer for 2026, and that would be Jordan Clay. He's a 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver from San Antonio. He's a top 100 player nationally by 247, top 200 by the two other services. I'd imagine with this offer, he's going to be pretty high on OU's wide receiver board. He visited OU for the Houston game. On film, his stats last year was he had 41 catches for like 800 yards and 10 TDs, which for a sophomore is pretty good. On film, he's just another big, talented, athletic wide receiver from Texas. They just seem to just appear all over the place. So an interesting offer. Another offer, when you think about Mason James from Norman being an OU target, Zion Robinson from Mansfield being an OU target, Jordan Pyle from Dallas Baptist, also being someone that OU's been heavily interested in. The wide receiver targets are starting to build up. And again, OU seems to be focused mainly on Texas. So that's, which Emmett Jones obviously has serious connections, and really, you can find your elite talent in Texas. Just have to get the right guys. So OU had a bunch of unofficial visitors, for the Houston game. I talked about 6 last week. They all visited, confirmed. We have social media content confirming them. So the big one obviously was Ethan Booby Feaster, the 5-star 227 wide receiver. He was the big player. And then Grant Wise, offensive lineman from Florida, top 200 type player, 6'4", 310. His second unofficial visit to Norman, which is a big sign that OU's probably, right there in the top group. He also confirmed. But there were 3 players that I didn't talk about that since then been able to get confirmation on. And there's a whole bunch of other players that were listed from various sites, not going to, steal anybody's visit and list information, but there was a bunch of players on campus. This isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch. So the three guys I'm going to highlight are Joseph Graves, 2027 defensive tackle from Tulsa, plays at Booker T. Washington. He's 6'3", 280. He's also a high school wrestler. He earned an OU offer from the summer camp where he was fantastic. He has great stats from his freshman year, tackles for loss, sacks, tackles as well. And he's the son of former OK Prep star Pearly Graves, who played at Tulsa Central and signed with Texas Tech and had some injuries. But Joseph is already, like I said, 6'3", 280. So by the time he's a senior, I'm imagining he's going to be 300 pounds and just, a dominating defensive tackle. He looks like he's got top 100 type potential to him, which is great for OU because OU is, probably got a big lead for him at this point. Then Drew Evers, Nick Evers' brother, was back on campus, which is big. He had visited during the spring and last fall, and OU seemed to be in a great spot. But then he seemed to be going to other campuses and kind of doing a road show, visiting other places. So it was kind of wondering where OU was on his list. So he got back on campus. He's 6'4", 6'4.5", 290. He's from Flower Mound. He's a top 200 composite ranking. I think that's probably he's close to the top 150, top 100. He's got excellent guard tackle versatility. So having him back on campus, big win for OU. OU's offensive line class is shaping up very in a great way, to use the Bob term. So getting Evers back and Grant Wise is just two more. You can never have enough we could never have enough offensive linemen, which we're discovering this fall to our detriment. So having, if OU could sign six guys with the new scholarship limits, right? Or 7 even. So Evers being back on campus along with Grant Wise, that's 2 wins for Bill Bedenbaugh in terms of who he could add to his O-line board in terms of folks that are good, offerable prospects, committable prospects that are seriously interested in OU. And the last guy is Keith Ford from Duncanville, defensive end, 6'4", 235, 240 range. It's his 3rd visit to OU. OU's targeted Ford heavily. He's from Duncanville. OU would like to be able to sign some kids. They've got the 2027 wide receiver they love. Trenton Yancey has transferred to Duncanville. So it'd be nice to get back into the Duncanville area. Obviously, OU signed Savion Byrd, and that didn't work out. So Ford's ranked in the top 100 by several services. I've watched his film. It's really, really good. He would be if you could get him at defensive end, that just starts the ball rolling. Then we already have some Tulane visitors confirmed. Obviously, as the week goes on, more names will sort of announce and will show up. But it's an afternoon game, so that might hurt a little bit. But we've got 2 names from across the country, actually. So the first name is from San Diego. His name is Ana Fa'alave Johnson. He's a 2027 prospect. He's 6 foot 180. He's an athlete, has an OU offer, and he is a top 25 player in the nation, according to On3 and everyone else. So he's a 5-star. I mean, when your composite ranking is like 17 in the nation, you're a 5-star prospect. So last week it was Feaster. This week it is Fa'alave Johnson. And then the other big-time player coming in is a 2026 player. It's Jake Krull, the edge rusher from IMG. If you've been looking at my 2026 sort of predictions, players to watch, Jake Krull's been on both of those lists. He's 6'3", 230. He's visited OU twice already this year. He had a huge spring and summer. He's vaulted up the rankings, and he's now a top 75 player nationally. And he's a terror off the edge, just flying by big offensive tackles at camps. He was just eating them up alive. So that's the two Tulane visitors that are big names that are confirmed right now. Probably have some more names come up. OU official, OU verbals in the area probably will come up for some visits and things along those lines. But right now, that's the two names to watch, who I've publicly said on Twitter that they're going to be heading to Norman this weekend. Obviously, the Tennessee list is going to be expansive. So OU's commits are getting off the strong starts to their 2025 season. I'm going to just list off a couple of them. This is nowhere near comprehensive, just some of the stuff action I've seen on Twitter from various players and some folks watching players as well. Parker Thune, for instance, has gone and watched some OU verbals. So has Josh McCuistion, and so is Colin Kennedy. So the first name is Cortland Guillory, the cornerback from the Houston area that OU got. He's off to a massive start. He has 2 interceptions, an 85-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown. He's blocked a field goal. I just watched his huddle film. He looks fantastic, physical. I've said, and I'm going to stand by this, that the cornerback class next fall is going to be talked about in the same terms as the safety class this fall. And Guillory seems to be proving me right, and obviously proving Jay Valai right. To continue with that, Malik Hawkins is off to a great start. Blocked a punt for a touchdown in his last game. He's showing excellent coverage skills. He looks every bit the big, physical, athletic corner that OU thinks they're getting. Just watched Trenton Wilson's recent video. He's again off to a strong start, just like the others. In the game I watched, he had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss, and it's just he's a terror inside, just flying past offensive tackles. Interior offensive lineman. He's playing inside. He's playing at 3 tech, not playing defensive end, and he's just a blur. He's too fast, too powerful. They can't get a hand on him, and he's just making play after play. It's a little hard to talk stats with an offensive guard, but I've watched the highlights from Darius Afalava's first 2 games on Huddle, and he's just absolutely killing folks, just pounding defenders left and right. He looks fantastic. Jonathan Hatton. Okay, that's the Hatton problem I'm going to be having. Sorry, Jonathan Hatton, the San Antonio area running back, just posted a 200 yards plus rushing day, and inside that 200 yards was a 92-yard touchdown run. So Hatton's off to a big start and validating why a lot of people, myself included, think he's a close to 5-star top running back in the nation kind of player. Now, a name we've been kind of confused about and not quite sure where he fit but for a lot of the spring he was playing baseball as Grayson Harris at Ennis, and he's off to a big start his senior year now that he's focusing on football again and not playing baseball. He had nearly 200 yards rushing. They lost receiving, but he's making big plays, 60-yard plus, several 60-yard plus plays in the footage that was posted on Twitter over the weekend. So Grayson Harris seems to be, he was ranked high off his junior year. Then he didn't go to any camps or events because he was playing baseball, and he had his OU offer. So he figured, I guess he figured, why do I need to go to camps and prove my rating? So he then tumbled down some rankings. Wouldn't shock me if he posts another 1,000-yard type season and looks fantastic doing it, and perhaps gets a bounce back up the rankings where folks realize, well, he's an elite slot receiver, and that still counts for a lot. Speaking of wide receivers, Manuel Choice, Josh McCuistion on Sooner Scoop did a video feature on them on YouTube. You can find it there. But the last 2 games, he's had over 100 yards, multiple receptions, and his playing looks great, physical, athletic, just looking like, he's 6'4", 190, just looking like the physical force to complement the other OU wide receivers. So again, another great evaluation by Emmett Jones. And it certainly seems like he could be moving up the rankings. I mean, you just watch how fast and athletic he is and how powerful as well. He looks like a prototype elite, college flanker. He doesn't look like the number 70 or 80 wide receiver in the nation, mid 3-star guy that a couple of the services have. So that's all of the recruiting news that's currently out there. I'm hoping this is a nice distraction from the multiple reviews and recaps about how bad the Houston game was. I didn't post one. I did some reaction stuff on the Horns Down podcast. If you want to hear my opinion, go to the Horns Down podcast on YouTube. I talked to Chris twice about it. I got my frustrations over the game out of my system with those. So I thought you guys would appreciate a recruiting podcast that's all about recruiting, and I'm not going on some 30-minute diatribe about the offensive line and dragging you guys back for the last 5 years of offensive line and recruiting to kind of explain why we're here. If you follow this pod long enough, and I know a lot of you guys do, you have a lot of loyal listeners. Thanks, everyone. We've been talking about offensive line recruiting for the last 2 years and why OU's in the boat they are. So I don't need to rehash it again. So I hope you enjoy all the recruiting information. I have another update for you guys depending upon what the Tulane visitor list looks like. And if we have some recruiting news from either Cortez Mills or Andrew Babalola, definitely we'll have an update for you guys when either of those events occur. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget to leave a positive rating. Please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content. And also, that Patreon site allows me to keep doing this podcast for free for you guys. So I appreciate everyone, appreciate all the listeners, and let's hope we have a better Sooner effort against Tulane this weekend. Thanks.